You ever look up at a jetliner streaking across the sky and wonder what it takes to keep that thing up there? It's a symphony of engineering, a testament to human ingenuity. But sometimes, even the best-laid plans, the most sophisticated machines, well, they go sideways. And when they do, it ain't pretty. We're talking about those moments when the unthinkable happens, in-flight mechanical failures. Those heart-stopping instances where pilots and crew stare down disaster at 30,000 feet. These are the stories of the men and women who faced down metal fatigue, electrical gremlins, and the cold, hard reality of gravity. We're going to walk you through 10 of the most harrowing tales in aviation history, ranked from the merely unnerving to the downright terrifying. These are the stories that make you want to hug your mechanic and maybe say a little prayer before takeoff. So sit tight, folks, and make sure your tray tables are stowed and your seat backs are in their full, upright, and locked positions. Because this ain't no turbulence we're talking about. This is the real deal, the stuff they don't put in the in-flight magazines. Imagine this. You're soaring through the night sky, stars twinkling above, the hum of the engines lulling you into a sense of security. Then, without warning, the symphony of flight turns into a cacophony of alarms. Lights flash, systems shut down, and the plane begins to shudder like a bucking bronco. That's the nightmare scenario that unfolded on a routine flight that quickly became anything but. Multiple critical systems, the lifeblood of the aircraft, decided to call it quits at the same time. Engines sputtered, hydraulics whined their last, and the navigation system, well, let's just say it went on a permanent coffee break. Now, I've seen my fair share of messy situations, but this one takes the cake. It was a perfect storm of mechanical mayhem, the kind of thing that makes even seasoned pilots break out in a cold sweat. The odds were stacked against them, the margin for error razor thin. But here's the thing about pilots. They're cut from a different cloth. They're the cowboys of the clouds, cool under pressure, with nerves of steel and the reflexes of a mongoose on espresso. And on this night, they needed every ounce of that grit and determination. They say the most dangerous parts of a flight are takeoff and landing. Well, this next story proves that point with bells on. Picture this. You're buckled in, engines are roaring, and you're feeling that familiar surge of adrenaline as the plane hurtles down the runway. But instead of that smooth liftoff, that feeling of weightlessness, something goes wrong. Really wrong. Warning lights erupt across the instrument panel like a bad Christmas display. Alarms blare, and the plane shudders, fighting to stay airborne. This ain't no simulated emergency, folks. This is the real deal, and the crew knows it. They're staring down a potential catastrophe, a metal bird trying to turn into a lead sled right before their eyes. The pressure is on and the clock is ticking. They say in these situations a pilot's training kicks in. Well, let me tell you, there's training, and then there's staring down a potential disaster with a plane load of passengers counting on you. This, my friends, was the ultimate test. You ever been driving at night? Headlights cut out? Pitch black? Can't see your hand in front of your face? Now imagine that feeling at 30,000 feet. That's what these pilots were up against when their navigation and display systems went kaput. Mid-flight. No warning, just gone. 1 minute, instruments are humming along. Next minute, it's a ghost in the machine. Screens go dark, dials go haywire. Talk about a bad day at the office, right? This is where the training kicks in. See, these pilots, they train for this kind of stuff. Simulators, drills, the whole 9 yards. Because when the fancy gadgets fail, you gotta rely on the old school know-how. Maps, compasses, the feel of the plane. It's about keeping your cool, trusting your gut, and bringing that bird down in one piece. This wasn't just a close call, folks. It's a stark reminder that even with all the bells and whistles sometimes, it's the low-tech solutions that save the day. It's a testament to the men and women who keep those planes flying, even when the odds are stacked against them. We've all been there. That moment when your computer freezes, your phone crashes, and you just want to chuck the whole thing out the window. Frustrating, right? Now imagine that feeling at 35,000 feet, except instead of a laptop, It's the entire flight control system. That's the nightmare scenario these pilots faced when their plane decided to take an unscheduled vacation from modern technology. One minute, they're cruising along. Next minute, the controls go stiff, instruments go haywire. Talk about a bad case of the Mondays. In the blink of an eye, they went from high-tech aviators to wrestling a giant metal bird with a mind of its own. No power steering, no autopilot, just pure grit and determination. This, my friends, is what they call a manual mode situation. And trust me, it ain't for the faint of heart. It's about muscle memory, years of training, and a whole lot of praying. It's about feeling the plane, understanding its every move, and coaxing it back under control. You ever heard a car backfire? That loud bang that makes you jump out of your skin? Now imagine that sound, amplified 1,000 times over, while you're hurtling through the air at 500 miles an hour. That's what these passengers experienced when one of their engines decided to call it a day. Not just a sputter, not just a cough, but a full-blown, catastrophic explosion. One minute, you're sipping your ginger ale, enjoying the in-flight movie. The next minute, the whole cabin is shaking like a paint mixer. People describe it as a heart-stopping bang, followed by a bone-rattling vibration. The kind of experience that makes you question your life choices, you know? But amidst the terror, the chaos, the sheer pants-wetting fear, there's a group of people who don't panic. The crew. They're trained for this. They've drilled for this. They've run through every possible scenario in their sleep. And while the passengers are understandably freaking out, these men and women are already springing into action. You ever heard the saying, any landing you can walk away from is a good one? Well, in the aviation world, that saying gets put to the test more often than you'd think. And sometimes, it's not just the landing, but the whole darn flight that'll have you questioning your choice of travel. Take the Gimli glider, for example. Now, this wasn't some newfangled experimental aircraft. This was a Boeing 767, a workhorse of the sky. In 1983, this particular 767, nicknamed the Gimli glider, was cruising at altitude when things went south. And by south, I mean they ran out of fuel. Now, you're probably thinking, how in the world does a modern airliner just run out of fuel? Well, it turns out, even the most sophisticated machines are at the mercy of human error. A miscalculation during refueling left the Gimli glider with less than half the fuel it needed. Not ideal, to say the least. So there they were, 41,000 feet in the air, cruising along with no engines. Imagine that for a second. You're hurtling through the air at hundreds of miles per hour, and the only sound you hear is the wind whistling past the windows. Section 2. A Pilot's Intuition. Pilots. They say you can't fix stupid, but I'll tell you what you can fix, a fuel leak. Or at least you hope you can, because when you're thousands of feet in the air and your fuel gauge starts heading south faster than a flock of geese in winter, well, let's just say it gets your attention. This ain't like running out of gas on the interstate. There's no pulling over for this kind of pit stop. One particular flight found itself in this very predicament. Cruising along, minding their own business, when the pilots noticed something fishy, their fuel levels were dropping, and not the normal, we're burning fuel kind of drop. This was more like a someone left the gas cap off kind of drop. Turns out they had a fuel leak. And not just a little drip either. We're talking a steady stream of precious kerosene escaping into the atmosphere. Now, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that running out of fuel at 30,000 feet is bad for business. We've all heard of power steering, right? Makes turning your car a whole lot easier. Well, airplanes have something similar called a hydraulic system, except instead of helping you parallel park, it helps control the plane's most essential functions. The flaps, the brakes, the landing gear, you name it. So imagine being thousands of feet in the air and suddenly, your hydraulic system decides to take a vacation. That's exactly what happened on one unforgettable flight. Mid-flight, the pilots received a series of warning lights indicating a complete hydraulic system failure. Now, when I say complete, I mean every single backup system had also gone kaput. No pressure, right? Except in this case, the lack of pressure was the problem. Without hydraulic pressure, those crucial control surfaces become about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. Section 2. A Herculean Effort. You ever been cruising down the highway, radio blasting, not a care in the world, when suddenly, bam! Flat tire. That jolt, that split second where you wrestle the wheel, that's your instincts kicking in. Now imagine that feeling at 30,000 feet. That's what these pilots faced when their autopilot decided to take a break. 1 minute they're sipping coffee, the next they're staring at a flashing dashboard in a plane trying to take a nosedive. No time for manuals, no time for mayday calls, just pure, unadulterated instinct. See, up in the air, a sudden descent ain't like missing your exit. It's a one-way ticket to a whole heap of trouble. These guys, they didn't sign up for a roller coaster ride, but there they were, wrestling a hunk of metal back from the brink. Talk about a bad day at the office, and you know what they say about pressure? It makes diamonds. These pilots, they dug deep, wrestled that plane back under control, and brought everyone down safe and sound. Proof positive that sometimes your gut is the best co-pilot you can have. Imagine driving down the road and your speedometer starts doing the jitterbug. Fuel gauge bouncing between full and empty, temperature gauge redlining like a disco ball. Not exactly confidence-inspiring, right? Now imagine that happening at 35,000 feet. That's the nightmare scenario these pilots found themselves in. Mid-flight, their instruments decided to throw a party, and nobody told the band to play the right tune. Gauges were spitting out numbers that would make a mathematician blush, and the control screen looked like a slot machine on overdrive. Talk about a recipe for disaster. You see, pilots rely on those instruments like a mechanic relies on his wrenches. They tell you how fast you're going, how high you are, how much fuel you got left to burn. When those instruments go haywire, you're flying blindfolded in a hurricane. But here's the thing about pilots. They're trained to expect the unexpected. They're like the MacGyvers of the sky, always ready with a backup plan and a roll of duct tape. Well, folks, there you have it. 10 tales of mechanical mayhem, 10 stories of human resilience. We've seen engines explode, autopilots go rogue, and instruments throw temper tantrums. We've seen planes turned into gliders and landings that would make a stunt pilot sweat. But through it all, one thing remains constant: the unwavering courage of the men and women who keep us safe in the skies. They face down fear, conquer chaos, and bring us home safe, time and time again. These stories, they're not meant to scare you, they're meant to inspire you. To remind you that even when the odds are stacked against us, even when the machines fail us, the human spirit can overcome anything. So next time you're cruising at 30,000 feet, take a moment to appreciate the skill and dedication of the folks up front. They're the unsung heroes of the sky, the ones who keep us flying high, even when things go south. And that concludes our countdown of the 10 most terrifying mechanical failures in flight. Although these incidents are chilling, they also demonstrate the ability of flight crews to handle the unexpected and save lives even in the worst scenarios. What do you think of these stories? Have you heard of any other mechanical failures during flight? Share your thoughts and any experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel for more fascinating aviation stories and click the bell to stay updated on our latest posts. Thank you for joining us, and see you soon for another deep dive into the world of aviation.